Hello and welcome back. Grumpy old Grognard here, and well, my grand plans of setting myself up with a fancy chroma key background have failed. I'm going to keep working on it, but the truth is I got all this fuzzy hair and the beard, and it's just the anti-aliasing. I just get this weird green halo. So we're going to try. We're going to keep trying. I'll keep working on it. But in the meantime, I guess you're just going to have to deal with my office. Anyway, today we're going to talk about WEG Star Wars. This is a subject which is very close to my heart, and I really do want to talk to you about it. But first things first, as you all know, we had our 100th subscriber, and we gave away our rules encyclopedia, John at LibreArts Online. Enjoy. And in the meantime, we put up a poll on Twitter to see what we should do next, and there was Castles and Crusades, Player's Handbook. There was Osric from Lulu. There was a first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. I was kind of rooting for that one. I gotta tell you, folks, I understand the High Guy Gaxian is kind of hard to read, and the rules are kind of strange in there, but if you're a Dungeon Master, I don't care what edition you're Dungeon Mastering, you need to read the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Sorry, I don't take you seriously until you do. I'm a one-e snob. Anyway, the poll came back, and it was a dead heat between the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook and Osric. So we're going to do a little die roll here to see which of those 1,000 subscriber milestones, if and when we ever get to 1,000 subscribers, that we're going to give away. So here goes. And let's do this thing. So we're going to have odds, Osric, and we'll have evens, Player's Handbook. Here we go. That's an odds. Looks like the 1,000 subscriber reward is going to be a copy of Osric from Lulu.com, and I'll go ahead and order that this afternoon. Let's move on to Star Wars. And there you have it. Osric wins. Osric is the original retro clone. There was a dearth in 1E materials. Wizards of the Coast tried very hard to kill the first edition completely. They pulled all of their PDFs off of Paizo. And while we all know how Paizo responded to that, they actually kicked WotC's ass by cloning their third edition game and turning that into their new flagship model. But I had all of the first edition materials collected on Paizo, so I was furious when WotC simply said, "Oh yes, you gave us all kinds of money for this stuff, but you can't download it anymore." So that was when WotC. I mean, they kind of lost me with 3E because, God, that wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, maybe a little spoiled, but we were accustomed to a small, dynamic, aggressive game company that gave us maybe 3 different editions of Dungeons and Dragons, but they were 3 different editions of Dungeons and Dragons, all of which were compatible with each other. So when 3D came along and it wasn't backwards compatible with anything, that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. But then when I saw WotC deliberately and maliciously trying to kill the first edition, I mean, all of their previous works, they were like, buy 4E or nothing. And 4E, I mean, come on. So anyway, Osric comes along, and Osric basically clones first edition. The Wizards of the Coast tried to trick them, tried to bully them into taking it off. They sent them a letter that looked an awful lot like a cease and desist, telling them to stop selling Osric. And Osric was like... So that became the first clone, because it turned out that, and they knew it, Wizards of the Coast didn't have a legal leg to stand on. They had no legal recourse to try to force them to take Osric down, other than try to maybe trick them by sending this letter. So Osric became the first edition clone, the first real retro clone. So we're going to be sending one of those out when we hit 1,000 subscribers. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Star Wars. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Some of you probably just came here for the download. So this is what this week's download is. This is a little something I threw together. Now, the Star Wars D6 system is not necessarily meant to be run with miniatures. It is a system that really it translates perfectly to theater of the mind. So if that's your preferred way of playing, then by all means, do it to it. But this is the set of standees that I made for my games because I like to finish up with big epic battles. So these are the ones that I actually chop up and use. But this is what we're talking about. It's very simple. Cut them out, stand them up. You can use standees, or if you prefer, they've got these little stands here so you can put them together so they stand up triangle style. Don't use those. Get the standees. I use them. They work great. The little stands. So we've got villains, we've got heroes, we've got different factions, color-coded factions, right? Wookiees, Ewoks, Sand People, Gamorreans, Jawas. Again, 3 different factions of each. We've got... Let's skip a few pages here. We've got stormtroopers, sand troopers, cold troopers. We've got pilots, vehicle pilots, and somewhere around here, I've got some fighter pilots too. Scouts, royal guards, mind, what do you call them? Probe droids, mind probe, imperial R2 units, mouse droids. You know, just a whole selection. And then, of course, player characters. You know, they're going to have their own little thing going on, as yellow is a neutral kind of factionless faction. These come in 3 different types. But it's just a bunch of different species, different looking characters. Some of them dressed kind of Han Solo-ish or Princess Leia-ish, but clearly not. Some of them just completely different. There's some Mandalorians in here. I think I got like 5 Mandalorians in here. Yes, Jar Jar Binks is in there. Sorry, guys, but you know, what can I say? Part of the canon. Anyway, maybe not Jar Jar himself, but the species. So that's the download. If you just came here for that, look below. You'll find what you're looking for in the description. Download it, enjoy it, use it, have fun with it. Today, what I want to talk to you about is the wrong book. I got this. This is the 30th anniversary edition, but this is the version that I always played. This was the first version we got. This is the Star Wars role-playing game. First edition. Now, I'll be honest with you, the first edition is great. It does break down in a few spots. The version that I play is kind of more like version, I'm not sure how to describe it, version 2.1.75 maybe. But I use mostly the first edition rules because they're simple. I don't like a lot of complicated rules. The whole beauty of the D6 system is that it doesn't have a lot of clutter. There's a lot of dice rolling. I mean, every system has its ups and its downs. One of the downs of this system is that there is a lot of dice rolling. But the dice rolling is quick. The action is fast. This is a system which was, I think it was initially came from the Ghostbusters IP. It was the first role-playing game that they made using the D6 system. It's designed to be a system for action, cinematic action role-playing, and it's perfect for the job. Let's take a look. This was one of the first role-playing games, in fact, maybe the first role-playing game that had full color inserts. Okay? The art is beautiful too, but the game is full of, I'm tearing my binding here, trying to open it this way. This, for example, has got a piece of very famous concept art from the original movie. Okay? And we all know these. We all know this scene, right? So that has full of actual photographs from the movie. And it, like I said, it does have more color. There's more color plates in here. One of my favorites actually is. What's in this one? Yes. Join the Imperial Navy. Make a difference. Right? So, creating a character, super duper simple. The game uses something called templates. Let's see if I can find a few of them in here. Templates basically are generic character types. You basically pick, here they are. You basically pick a generic character type. For example, brash pilot. Okay? You fill in your name, you fill in your player name, your height, sex, age for character, physical description, quick physical description. And then it gives you your basic abilities, dexterity, perception, knowledge, strength, mechanical, and technical. And then it gives you 7 dice that you can place into your various skills under each. So if you are using a blaster, blaster is a dex skill. So your default blaster skill, if you're just some guy using a blaster, it's going to be 3D. But you can put more dice into that skill. So if, say I had 7 dice, I could put 2 of them into blaster. Now I've got a 5D. Okay? Everything's done in dice and pips. See? 3D plus 2, that's pips. So there's a progression to skills. It's pretty simple. It's dice plus 1 plus 2 are the pips, and then moves up to the next die. So the progression of a skill would be 1 die plus 1, 1 die plus 2, 2 dice, 2 die plus 1, 2 die plus 2, 3 dice. So basically, as you progress upwards, you roll more dice to reach your target goals, to see whether or not you've hit the target, how much damage you do. Well, I guess that would only really work for strength, but whether or not you hit the target or pick the lock or whatever it is you're trying to do. So these templates make character creation super quick. If you are one of those guys who likes to have absolute and total control over everything about your character, then you can do that too. You can distribute, it'll give you a point buy system where you can distribute your own dice into your attributes and then choose skills from there. Again, I don't see much point in that. Most of the character templates in here work pretty well. Now, there's some stuff at the beginning here. This book is interesting because it breaks things into 2 sections. And this whole first section here is basically an introduction for people who've never played role-playing games before. This is the entire players section right here. Okay, and then we move on to the Game Masters section. Okay, an introduction to game mastering. This is all stuff that I do recommend you read it, because it does have a lot to do with running the particular genre of Star Wars. A lot of tips and clues on how to run, how to create your setting, how to run your non-player characters in a Star Warsy kind of way. It's good reading, but there's not a lot of game mechanics in here. Okay, it does also go into specific skill. Here we go. Yeah, skills, specific skill descriptions and how to use them. Again, new referees should definitely familiarize themselves with all that stuff. And then combat. The combat in this system is outrageously good. Again, there's a lot of dice. You just have to deal with that. But the character, it's all very simple. For example, I shoot a blaster at you from short range. So my to hit is 10, and I have well, what did I say before? We had 5 dice skill. Okay, so there's my 5 dice. I roll. Yes, that's a hit. 6, 12. Okay, 6, 12, and 21. Okay, so that's definitely a hit. So now I hit my opponent with a blaster that does 5 dice damage. You'll notice I'm rolling 1 off-color die. That's an exploding die. You probably already know what that means. So I roll 5 dice for damage for my blaster rifle, and I do so 10, 15, 20 points of damage. Now the opponent is wearing 1 die of armor and has 2 die plus 2 strength. Okay, So that's 20 points of damage versus 2d strength plus 1 die of armor. So that's, he rolls a 10, 11. Okay, so what that means is that, oh, and that goes up to 12 because of the plus 1 on his strength, is the extra pip. So that's, I've scored more damage than his strength roll, but not twice as much. So he's wounded. There's no damage roll. That was the damage roll. He's wounded. That means that he's going to be -1 and on all -1 die on all rolls. And if he gets hit wounded again, he's going to be incapacitated. So combat is super duper simple. The exploding die is a wonderful mechanic. I really do enjoy it. It gives the even characters with lower skills at least a chance to do things extraordinary. It kind of doubles with the force point. We'll talk about that in a second too. Force points are another mechanic that I find excellent in this system. But it basically gives you a chance to do extraordinary things. I roll 5 dice, right? Oh, look, one of them rolled a 6. Oh, no, I'm going to cheat. Oh, look, one of them rolled a 6. So what this means is we add all these dice together, okay? 6, 9, and 9 is 13, and 6 is 19. So now I get to roll this die again and add that into 19, okay? So now we got a 24, okay? So this exploding die, and if I rolled another 6, then I would add that 6 in, it would be 25, and I'd roll again. So I've got up to 27. So this gives lower level characters a chance to do extraordinary things. Okay, it's just it's not a great chance, and I wouldn't hang your character's lives on rolling a 6, but it can come in very handy. So we're not going to get too into combat because I could talk about it forever. This is the ground combat. Wounds and healing I've kind of already explained to you. If your damage roll is less than their strength roll, they're stunned. That's all. They can't do anything for the rest of the round, but they'll be fine. They don't take any actual physical damage. If your damage roll is above their strength roll, and when they're wearing armor, that gets basically added into their strength roll for damage purposes. So that's all that is. So if you have a stormtrooper with 2d plus 1 strength and a 1d armor, which is what stormtrooper armor is, then his effective strength when rolling against damage is going to be 3d plus 1. It's a pretty simple system. If the amount of damage you take is more, like if your strength roll is less than the roll, but not by twice as much. So if I roll a 12 for damage, you roll a 10 for strength, then you are going to be wounded. You take 2 wounds, you are going to be incapacitated. If your damage roll is 3 times the strength roll, well, at that point you're mortally wounded. And there's a series of the other die rolls you go through. The odds are if somebody doesn't help you fairly quickly, you're going to die. Chapter 5, Starship data. This stuff's wonderful. I mean, it's real, again, just as simple. Your X-Wing fighter is defined in this little tiny box right here, and it's all the information you need to run that vessel in combat. The combat system is very simple. Again, it is not designed for miniatures. It's designed to be theater of the mind. It works beautifully. The basic rulebook contains a number of good ships in it. There are some other ships that are available in some of the supplements, so I'll talk to you about those in a little while. But this whole section here is, okay, here we go. We got to the Force. Now the Force rules I like. Okay, a lot of people complain about the Force rules being broken. They say that, they work great at low level, but once they get high level, these characters become super powerful. Well, I don't have a problem with that because these characters are Jedi Knights, and of course they're going to be super powerful. Have you not watched the movies where they're cutting open arrow like blast doors with their lightsabers and doing triple, quadruple spins in the air and knocking people's blasters back at them. Come on. Of course they're super powerful. They're supposed to be super powerful. So in my opinion, the force rules in this game are not broken. Okay, the characters become super powerful at high level because they're supposed to be. Now, if you want to keep Jedi out of your game, to keep superhero type characters out of your game, I understand. That makes sense. I think that as a general rule, like, I don't like superhero Dungeons and Dragons characters. I hate 5th edition. I hate the superhero element of the characters. But for this game, for this setting, for this franchise, yes, of course, they're Jedi. They're Jedi or they're Sith. They're supposed to be super powerful. Okay, they are superheroes. The one rule in here that I would like to talk to you about, other than the generic stop complaining about the system being broken at high level, because it's really not. The one element I'd like to talk about here is force points. Here, force points. Force points is basically, to my knowledge, the first time anyone's ever used what later evolved into inspiration points. Okay, so what force points allow you to do is, if you are doing something super duper important and you really need to succeed, you can use a force point. Now, what that does is it doubles your attributes for the one turn, for the 5 to 6 seconds of combat that's about to take place. So if you had a 5D blaster skill and you're shooting at a stormtrooper and you absolutely positively have to hit him, because if he gets away, he's going to turn over all of the he's going to tell the local garrison about you, and all of the stormtroopers in the area are going to converge on this point, and your mission is going to fail. There's no way around it. You've got to hit this guy. You use a force point. Okay, that allows you to roll 10 dice instead for your to hit roll. So that doubles all your attributes and all your skills for just that one round. Now, there's a catch. If you use your force point in a villainous way, if you murder somebody with your force point, if you use it to steal, if you use it to somehow make your life better without any consideration of the people around you, you can use the force point, but you lose it, and then you get a dark side point. This game is brutal on dark side characters. Okay, if you use it in a not necessarily heroic way, but a way that's not completely selfish, you can only use the force points once per adventure, but at the end of the adventure, you get the force point back. If you use your force point in a way that is heroic, then you become then you not only get your force point back at the end of the adventure, but you get another one, so you can actually build up force points. The caveat of this being, do not ever use your first force point selfishly, because you will lose it and you will never, ever get another one. You will be without force points for the remainder of the campaign. That's going to suck. It really is important to have that bonus. So even if you intend for your character to somehow later fall from grace, yeah, don't make it your first roll, because I guarantee you're going to regret it. So force points. This game had a lot of innovations in it. The force points was one of them. The exploding die, I believe, was an innovation of this game. I don't think the exploding die I don't think maybe that appeared until the 2nd edition, but I use it. It's part of my game system. I use the exploding die. Okay, so this whole section's on the Jedi code. More color plates. Again, I loved these color plates. They really did add a great deal to the book. First time, I think, anyone ever used color plates in a role-playing game. Okay, other characters, how to generate, how to run, some basic NPCs, stock characters, running adventures. This is all just pretty basic DM stuff. Again, more color plates. I love this ad for the Incom T65 X-Wing. We all know this one. I guess the Empire didn't buy it, so the Rebellion did. Okay. Just, like I said, beautiful art. This is a introductory kind of adventure. Just a standard everyday generic rebel base that you can use as a kind of a template for other rebel bases. And then of course there's the templated characters, reference sheets for running the game, collectible dice. Yeah, good call on that one. Okay, and that is 141 pages, super thin, everything you need to run a Star Wars campaign. Everything. No, it does not include stuff from the prequel movies. It does not include stuff from the sequel movies. It does not include a lot of non-player characters and things that appeared later. So what? The system is so simple that you really can just plop down in an afternoon and just write up statistics for pretty much any setting you ever wanted. This game covers it. It's all covered here. Now, that is all you need to play, but I do recommend some other books. This is the Star Wars source book. This is just a fun book. I don't care if you play role-playing games or not. I don't care if you think you'd rather play D20 or whatever. This is an amazing. This has a whole bunch of other starfighters in it, all the stuff, iconic stuff from the movies, the A-Wings, B-Wings. Some beautiful art. Okay. It's got larger starships, right? Remember these bad boys, right? Imperial Star Destroyers. Talks about that kind of combat. Okay, there are ways to incorporate larger starships, capital ships, and even like, you know, what do you call them? Death Stars and that kind of like monstrous base size, planet-sized craft into combat using a system called scaling. I prefer the first edition scaling rules. I would go ahead and use those if I were you. Do not use the second edition. They're kind of broken in some weird ways that, yeah, don't use them. Okay. Vehicle rules. So I do recommend the Imperial. I mean, it'll just, and like I said, there's nothing in here that you can't do yourself, right? But all the alien races. But it's a lot easier not to do it yourself. Plus, there's this amazing equipment table. So yes, I do recommend you grab the Star Wars source book. Okay? There are two other books that I do recommend. One of them I already flashed at you. I run Rebel campaigns, which means I would like to have the Rebel source book, the Rebel Alliance source book, contains details on the equipment, vehicles, spacecraft, and a military organization of the Rebel Alliance. And then there is, of course, its counterpart, the Imperial source book. I do recommend all four of these books. They're really good. If you run a merchant campaign, I don't happen to have it, but they do have a supplement for merchant campaigns as well. The other stuff you don't need, there's 140 different publications. You don't need them. You don't need them all. I cannot stress to you enough the importance that West End Games played to the Star Wars franchise for a very, very, very long time. When the Thrawn trilogy was being written, before it even became the Thrawn trilogy, when it was really just a book, these are the books that George Lucas sent the author and said, here, consider this, kind of canon. Try to wrap your books around this, because this is true to my vision of what Star Wars is. Until this series of books came out, Rhodians weren't Rhodians. Like they didn't have all of these alien races that people had fallen so in love with didn't have names. This is the book that gave them the names. This is the series that created the canon upon which pretty much the entire expanded universe was built. These are the books. Okay? And I know there's expanded universe, extended universe. Just there's all every fan has its own way of saying things. Doesn't really matter to me. You all know what I'm saying. That whole EU was born from these books, and of course several others. This is my personal collection. There's a bunch more. I used to have a whole bunch more, but life, that was 30 years ago, and life happens. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you about Star Wars D6 and why I think it is perfect for not just Star Wars, but if you are doing any kind of homebrew and what you're looking for is an action-oriented cinematic adventure, this is the system to use. It is now open source. There's an open source D6 system that you can use to create any setting you want. And if what you're looking to do is to create an action movie on a tabletop role-playing game, this is the system to use. And there you have it. Star Wars D6 West End Games was a vital part of the development of the Star Wars IP. It was integral to the development of the expanded universe, which obviously, since Jar Jar Abrams didn't actually want to read any books, has no longer canon. The Disney has completely not only has completely unwritten the previous canon. I mean, the new movies actually conflict the old movies. They're just completely ignoring everything up until they took over the franchise. That's what happens. Big corporations, they take over intellectual property, they grind it into the ground, and then they dispose of it. It's going to happen to Star Trek too, guys. There's no way around it. Yeah, there's a little hope now with Lower Decks and Picard, but no, they're going to do what corporations do. They're going to try to increase its mass appeal by making it more accessible to the general population, and then when that fails, which it will, it always does. I mean, Star Trek doesn't need a princess movie, guys, but they're going to do it, and that'll be it. They're going to do to Star Trek and Star Wars and all these other IPs they're snapping up. Firefly, they're going to destroy Firefly. What can you do? Just as far as I'm concerned, the expanded universe is canon, and the last movies are not, because the last movies are trash, and the expanded universe was awesome. So there we are. See you next week.